Welcome to Coachable. I'm here with my friend, Mr. Kevin Duffy, Coach Kevin Duffy on Instagram and to the world, to the golfing world specifically. Kev, how are you today?
I'm great, my man. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be back on the mic. I haven't done a pod in a little bit, and I kind of got the itch.
Yeah, well, I love it. And tell us a little bit. You're live from your facility in sunny yet cold Massachusetts, right? So tell us a little bit about Coach Kevin Duffy. Tell us a little bit about the facility. Give us the rundown why you're here on this very special occasion.
Yeah, so the gym is in Acton, Massachusetts, which is about, well, depending on traffic, I'm sure you are well aware that can change the answer, but somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes outside of Boston. Um, it is currently wet, but it is good for us because I have an indoor training facility for both obviously the fitness side of the house, and I don't know if it's a video podcast or not, but there's a hitting bay right behind me and some chipping green, so we get to practice year round. So I kind of have no excuse for me not working on my own game as well as my clients. We try to keep it a one-stop shop. So if you're driving in from, the city or wherever you're coming in Massachusetts, you can easily kill 2-3 hours here.
I love it.
It's easy to do.
I love it. I was just in Rhode Island, and this past week, and we went to Topgolf at 11 a.m. on a Saturday, and it was pouring rain, and the place was every bay was full. I mean, Massachusetts and that the whole Northeast is so golf ravenous. It blew me away. I was like, wow, this place is packed. But anyways, speaking of golf ravenous, your golf history and your training history. Tell us a little bit about that.
So it's actually kind of it's an uncommon one as far as golf fitness goes, but it's a very common one as far as fitness goes. So in the fitness world, I was a former college football player, fell in love with the weight room. That's not a story that's uncommon. What became uncommon for me is after college, I pursued rather than grad school, I pursued a ton of internships. So I do not have grad school experience, but I have absolute time in the weight room. So I spent time down in Exos, which is in Gulf Breeze, Florida, working with some injured military population, some NFL combine athletes, and then I went on to work with hockey teams. So I worked with Northeastern Hockey, Division II program after that out in Western Massachusetts. And then I ran a hockey performance studio for quite some time. But I fell in love with golf because kind of like everybody else in after college sports is I wanted to be still competitive and I had no intention of putting a chin strap back on. So I started playing more golf. I owned golf clubs growing up. What I was realizing is that the clients that were working with me, either for hockey or just for golf or fitness, were having some awesome results. So I've been coaching for the last 13 years, and I've probably been specialized in golf for the last 7. So it was kind of a different road from the golf fitness standpoint, but a pretty typical conversation standpoint as far as performance coaches goes. I'm not the first one who played college football and then walked into a weight room and was like, this is a good way to make a living. That's not unique, but the route to golf fitness was different.
Well, very fair, and I love that story. Tell me about, for people listening, the role of golf fitness, because I don't want to say it's new, right? But
Mm-hmm.
in the same world, once we saw Tiger start to hit it, a certain distance, and once TPI started to say, wait, if we had a fitter golfer, if golfers didn't lose time, then we can sell more golf balls, and then we can sell more equipment. Tell me about the role of Titleist Performance Institute. Tell me about the role of fitness within the golf world, how you've seen that change recently.
Yeah, so over the last 5 years, for a while there, I really credit the people that came before me to make that conversation much easier than the one I have to have today on selling golf fitness. I don't necessarily have to sell the role of golf fitness as much anymore as I do of just allowing people to understand how improving your athletic ability will help your golf. That is an easy conversation to have because the role of making people more athletic and having their golf game improve as a result is pretty straightforward as far as how quickly they start to see results. There's the conversation that, the people in front of me had to have on selling golf fitness was probably way more brutal than the hoops that I have to jump through now to sell the process of golf fitness. But what the TPI model has made it easier to do, and they continue to progress, is that when I screen somebody and take them through an evaluation, there's an immediate connection between my shoulder plane does this, so I may do this in my swing. For example, I make a bad turn at impact, so I push the ball. We're trying to eliminate some guesswork, and honestly, it helps a lot of golfers to let them know, like, hey man, you're not necessarily pushing the ball because of your poor technique. You're pushing the ball because you have trouble turning, or you are losing speed because you're not using your hips enough. And the conversation, obviously, it goes down two different planes. Are you coming to me from a golf performance standpoint, or are you coming to me because you want to be in better shape and you happen to play golf? I would probably say that 90% of my clients are actually looking to just improve their life, improve how they move, improve how they play. Uh, and oh, I'm a golfer, rather than like that top 10% of my clients who are playing tournament golf more regularly. So I would say 90% of my clients are everyday golfers. But yeah, that sales pitch of trust me, fitness is going to help your golf game. Luckily for me, has somebody fought the good fight before me, so I don't have to argue my case as much anymore.
And that was well said. With people, when people come to you, you mentioned the benefits that they get versus the benefits that they think they wanted, right, when they signed up. What is the role of fitness in? I'm going to give you two opposite ends of the spectrum. Say a 15 handicap and a scratch golfer. What is the role? Like, what do you see from somebody who starts with you at both ends of that spectrum? How does fitness really change their golf life or life?
Yeah, that's actually a perfect example, because I had two of those today. So I did an eval for a 15 handicap today, and I did an eval for a kid who's playing some Corn Ferry golf. So changing the 1% or the scratch handicap's physical needs is much harder, and it's a more exact. It's not as much not guesswork, but it's not as broad of a stroke. So I'll talk about kind of that player first. So generally, if I have a tournament golfer or a scratch golfer, they have performance goals, and then we're looking at those specific performance goals. So whether it's not having fatigue at the end of the round, which is something that you'll hear because those players are playing tournament golf 4 days in a row, that is something that we need to prioritize how we're attacking their performance fatigue, and making sure they're not making a compensation throughout their swing. Because generally, if I have fatigue and I have a compensation in my swing, for example, like maybe you early extend when you get tired and flip your hands, you can still play golf with really good hands. It's just harder to do. So if I can reduce the amount that they have that fatigue flare up, that improves their tournament scores, and they're more likely to, string together, 74, 75, or, maybe dust off a mid 60. But when we have the 15 handicap, I'm going to make bigger jumps. So my jumps in performance become way easier to do, because nobody gets worse at golf from improving their posture, right? So nobody's going to have a worse resulting golf swing from setting up with a neutral spine where they used to have desk posture, right?
Right.
Now, the biggest thing that also occurs with that mid handicap golfer, the 15 handicap golfer, is that they aren't playing as frequently as the low handicap golfer. So there's a skill gap for sure, right? It is a skill game. We have to work on it. So it's different wants, different needs. But I would say that the 15 handicap is my most common client. They're making bigger jumps quicker, because they're going to improve their game when they have less fatigue and better posture. And then the low handicap tournament player, we're kind of, a little bit more scalpel, right? A little bit more exact needs. Internal, external hip rotation might be something that they have that flares up. It's smaller things. And what you'll also see is like their handicap screens. There'll be less things that jump out on the radar. But one of the things that I guess I should also touch on is club head speed, right? So club head speed needs and wants are much more frequent on the mid handicap, and then with the lower level handicappers, I'm trying to keep their club head speed. It maybe tweak it a little bit higher and lower, but everybody improves when I work on their balance. So everybody's getting balance work, everybody's doing jump work, everybody's loading and lifting on one leg. So everybody's getting balance work, but it is it is a scalpel versus sledgehammer sometimes between
Sure.
higher level handicap and the level handicap.
You noticed you just mentioned some themes when it comes to your programming. How at this phase in your career, how I don't want to say repetitive, but how simple, if somebody looked at your programming, if somebody followed you around for the day, would you say that you do the very different things with everybody, or would you say that, I like this phrase, success leaves clues, and you're doing mostly the same movement patterns, and this is where people are like, that's it. But at the summation of that day, that when that intern or somebody walked around with you, they'd be like, oh man, it's really just that. Like, it's just sometimes it is that simple.
Yeah. So the saying in our gym is do the simple things savagely well for uncommon results. So
But
that is our driving force because there isn't as grand of a need to overcomplicate what could be done simply, as people may think. Now, granted, if you've been working with me for years, the odds of me giving you a complex exercise because it might add either a factor of fun or difficulty or something is definitely going to be different than if you're in, week one, day one. But guess what? A hinge pattern on one leg is still a hinge pattern on one leg. Someone might just be throwing something and someone might just be holding something. But
right,
it is to the point where like, and that's kind of the hill that I chose to not to die on, but that's the fight I'm going to fight in golf fitness is like, you can do this process and get so much better by simplifying this rather than, as I like to say, overcooking eggs, man. Just flip it over and kill the heat. It's going to come out great every time. So that's one of my favorite things is someone's like, hey, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling this. What should I be, working on to make sure that my hip opens up at rotations? Hey, man, don't overcook eggs. Do the thing we've been working on. It is going to work, and they start to see results. But the buy-in comes from like if you see results or not. So like I can't sell a simple program, talk about having golf fitness be simplified and not get results. So if I'm not getting results with somebody and we need to cross a different bridge by, maybe taking it up in a difficulty notch, then we'll take it there. But if I'm not getting results from doing the simple things, then sure, we may need to dive in a little bit deeper. But most of the time, we're going to get the results we want from oversimplification and, fall in love with patterns is the thing I like to say. Don't fall in love with exercises. Sure, I love doing a landmine. It's awesome. It's fun. It's cool. They're ripping it. It's a blast. But like, if you can't hip hinge, why would I give you? If you can't do a deadlift, why would I give you a landmine row press and crossover? It's
hmm
ridiculous. I wouldn't do that. It'd be negligent, and I'd probably have to call a lawyer, which I have no intention of doing anytime soon.
So you mentioned just then about if somebody can't hip hinge. When you see people who come in, um, and let's go with the high handicapper first. How when you see people come in with at a high handicap, how much
Mhm.
are you focusing on? Take me to a training session. They got a warm up, they got strength, they have power, they have mobility drills. But what are what are what do we see from that high handicapper? That is those themes from the high handicapper from a movement perspective.
So generally, we'll see, we've got that cross symmetry between like right shoulder, left hip, or left shoulder, right hip. A lot of times we kind of you can kind of put somebody in a department. Let's just talk about high handicap. Some guys or girls might be more thoracic spine needs than they are hip mobility, for example. And when you see that, we're just going to put more pressure in between the strength drills on thoracic spine mobility to kind of break up a carry, a push and a pull, right? An upper lower push. I won't. I mean, I don't know how much in the weeds your listeners are on and the fitness talk here, so I won't crush people. But like in between their squat, if there tend to be more of a thoracic spine need, for example, I'll break up their squat pattern with some thoracic spine mobility. But the conversation kind of comes back to, is it strength or mobility? And I always am asking people, why is there an or in there? It's just, yes, we're doing it both. You have a need here. I realized during your evaluation when you met with me that you were a lower body dominant need for mobility. That's where we're going to spend our time. And then a lot of the times people think they need mobility, and in reality, they need stability. So if you think your hip doesn't move well, try doing it on an unstable surface. It really moves unwell. So
Right.
a lot of times someone's like, oh, I need hip mobility, and they just have a weak hamstring. If you have a weak hamstring, your body's not going to let you plant and turn. It's not going to happen. You're just going to move. And oftentimes we mistake movement for quality movement when I want you to be a rotary athlete and not a lateral athlete, so that you're able to turn and not just slide away from the target and flip and try to make what
So
looks like an
I love that. And you just mentioned something about the hamstring. So I'd like to go, mention about going into the weeds. I get a lot of golfers specifically. I moved into a neighborhood where I'm golfing. I'm around golfers all the time. It's just a golf heavy community, and I love it. One of the things that comes up repeatedly, high or low handicap, is people are like, "Oh, I just need to stretch. I even need more mobility." And I'm like, "Guy, you're missing the forest for the trees." But how do you go about communicating the role of stability and mobility? I know how I do, but I just want to hear you say it, because the role of stability and mobility, I think people get confused when they say, "I just feel my hamstrings are tight," and I'm like, and I can see their rib cage, their posture. I know that they sit all day. I know they're on planes, or they're driving in a car all day, or they're sitting by the TV. So how do you go about communicating the role of stability and mobility to somebody who says, "Man, I'm so inflexible and my back hurts after." Go ahead, Kev.
Yeah, yeah. So generally, there's two ways to do it, right? The salesman hat. The salesman hat is like, do do what they want and what they need, are they different, or do we just need to convince them to get started? So sometimes if their wants and their needs, and I can sit here and just argue with them, or I could just say, yeah, we're going to work on mobility, and all of a sudden they've done one home hip mobility drill, a step up, and a lunge. Okay, sure, I did work on mobility. You're right. I address them and I look at them. They need some strength. They're not getting mobility. They're just getting what they need versus what they think they might want. So if I need to be a salesman and understand what their wants are and what their needs are, sometimes it's just better off just letting me take care of them, do what I know is going to work, and do that. Now, luckily, like Golf Digest having the top 50 banner makes it a little bit easier for me to have that conversation. Just say, hey, listen, sir, I know you think you need mobility, but you actually need strength. And they're like, okay, I didn't know that was the case. Let's go. But depending on the consumer and the conversation and how's it going, it's like, I honestly, I tell people all the time, I want to help you. And my best role is to have you do well enough to not need me as a coach anymore and tell your buddies about it. It's not for me to constantly push you to sign up for more sessions. Like, great. If you stay with me for 2 years, it's win for you, win for me. We all win. If you stay with me for 1 year, get great results, and send me 4 of your buddies, I would consider that more productive for everybody. So my goal is more on like, all right, how much do I need to sell this person and convince them what they want and what they need? Or I'm not going to argue anymore. Nobody benefits from being told you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. That's not a sales tactic I've ever heard. But if somebody's like Ed wants to be like, hey, tell me the why, I'll get in the weeds with them, right? We'll say, hey, you need this ability to anchor your leg before your spine even wants to move. So you don't need more stretching, man. Your hips are weak because you sit on your butt all day and you fly 4 days a week. So yeah, no, duh, your hips hurt. I would assume so.
Yeah.
They're screaming out for one, hydration, two, stop being on a plane so much, and three, get stronger. So if I don't have to put on my salesman hat, it's usually easier to cut straight to the point.
That's a good segue to what what benefits do you pass on to the golfer, lower high handicap, and tips that they're maybe surprised at? Is it their level of hydration on the course? Is it nutrition on the course? Is it a pre-round warm-up? You talk about the benefits of working with a fitness professional, specifically a golf fitness professional. By the way, we are talking with the top 50 golf fitness professional as per Golf Digest, Coach Kev Duffy. But talk to me about the benefits that sometimes people, what they pay you for in that 60 minutes. But I think one of the things that it impressed me about you, but also a lot of the people in my community, is that they pass on, right? That it's not just a 60 minute, they pass on benefits and value, right? Of that just doesn't stop when you leave, your facility.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is like I'm not going to accept somebody who tells me they have high goals, like letting themselves fall short from like some small things. There's no excuse if you tell me I want to win club championship, you came in second last year, that you're not warming up with a plan and you haven't figured out how you play your best golf. So if you're coming to me and say, hey, Duff, I want to win my club championship. I came in second the last 2 years. Uh, which actually conversation did happen, but I do coach the champs, so I'm a little torn. So
Right.
I want to help. I obviously want to help that guy get back to the championship and hope they battle it out and whatever. But there's no reason that he shouldn't have figured out what warm up benefits his game by the time tournaments come. Right? We have done a workout on the same exact day to find out if he's the type of guy who responds fantastic from the workout on the same day as you play, or a targeted warm up, or are you like more of an energy expenditure guy where you have to like go get out the jitters? There's no reason why if you play tournament golf, you're making an uneducated guess on how you're going to attack that tournament, especially if you're seeing somebody like myself. There's there's no excuse for like not having a food plan, like we're not having some protein on the course. We don't have, some type of either water, electrolyte mix, kind of pick to choose your brand. I have some favorites, but the there's no reason to not have a plan if you're seeing somebody like myself. But what I notice most frequently is like those guys already, kind of have a plan and then we just get exact. A lot of the mid-level handicap or high-level handicap have no plan. And to install a plan for them, it just makes their golf game so much easier. There's we've had people drop, 30 to 20, 20 to 20 to 10 around here. So that's more rewarding. Like I would say like my most rewarding clients are the higher handicap levels who playing better golf. But I think the king is the golfer who sees you with pain, who is, on the edge of giving up the game and is now playing 36 holes. So those are my most rewarding. Some people are like, and there's a reason we post on social media, like so and so won a championship or whatever. But like the most rewarding is the guy who had to walk with a giant Tylenol bottle in his bag and it, shakes every time he walks and no longer has that. That's way more rewarding. I feel better about it. And also it happens to me, my most frequent client rather than the 1% golfer who's trying to go from a 1 to a tournament 0. So
Let's talk about some of those limiting factors of golfers. So now we've ruled out necessarily we have some hydration strategies, we have nutrition strategies, we have day of strategies, which I love. I haven't heard that before, by the way. I like that. The fact that you give them a test, like, hey, try a workout day of, try doing, mobility maybe the day of, and then see how you feel. But in the same token, the limiting factors for golf, I mean, we know it can just be, you're off one day. You can go and you're like, man, so how do you boil down, the results based part of training to, do you use the Aura Ring? Do you use Whoop? Do you use just, because it's tough sometimes with the scorecard, right? Like for me, sometimes I notice cardio the day of. I feel like I got good wind. I don't feel like I'm on the back nine. I'm like, all right, I'm just warming up almost. But in the same token, on power days, sometimes I feel like I shouldn't golf that day. So how do you go about addressing the limiting factors of the golfer and creating a plan so that over the long haul, because Northeast is also a short golf season. You don't necessarily have all 12 months to figure it out. How do you go about figuring out what's right for somebody? What is their limiting factor? Do they need to do cardio? How does that play out?
Yeah, so there's kind of where we touched on earlier is like eliminating guesswork, right? So you're going to try to create a tournament condition. So I don't care if it's you need to put $100 on the line with your best friend to create that tournament condition, but you got to go find out. So I gave a speech on finding out what type of golfer you are at the PGA show a few years ago. So I kind of boil it down into like targeted workout that's like very specific needs, like hey, we need to open up this guy's thoracic spine, for example, right? We need a targeted workout that's the most common, like hey, let's address your exact needs of your swing. There's like full workout guy, which is closer to what you see on tour. So like
Hmm.
John Rahm, Rory McIlroy, like we're talking like big deadlifts, big pushes. They're doing 20 minutes hard, and then they're
Hmm.
getting out of there, which is not the category I find myself to be in. There's the three. There's the kind of the mobility, just stretching, and needs to be more pliable person. And then there's the energy expenditure, which is kind of that cardio that you talked about, which is I find myself to be in. If you take my football brain, put me on the first tee and jack me up with endorphins and like get me ready to go, I'm probably hooking that thing so far, OB, it's a problem. So like you have
Interesting.
to, yeah. So but the Corn Ferry player that we work with goes like full sweat, change t-shirts to the tee box. He tries he tries to make his workout to range session as short as possible. So if he can shorten it to be like, hey, how long do I need on the range? He's not a huge range rat, so he's like 40 minutes and kind of 25 of it's like putting. And he
Hmm.
does his workout as fast as possible to his round. And we're talking like med ball slams, like landmines, the whole deal.
Right.
And that's more common than you think, and especially for anybody who's watching full swing. Like they're not doing like little band bridges. That's not a
Right.
thing.
Right.
It's not as common as you might think it is. Like targeted mobility is a pretty common one. Like when in doubt, like that person's not going to play worse from doing some mobility in the morning before they play.
Sure.
But the targeted workout is probably the most common.
Okay.
Energy expenditure is probably third, and then that top level player doing like a full 20-minute intense lift is
Right.
fairly common. But yeah, there's no kind of going back to the original question, like there's no guesswork.
Right.
We're gonna create a tournament condition. So if you have a tournament coming up in July and it's hot, well, try A, B, C, and D. You know, create that tension that mimics the tournament, and then go try to replicate it because there's a reason we're trying to replicate what we're doing. Like you're trying to replicate a swing, you're trying to replicate your putting conditions, your heart rate's up. So put $100 on the line. I don't know, whatever gets your juices flowing, but do it. So try to
Yeah.
create, yeah, eliminating guesswork is kind of the short version of that long answer.
And let's go into the cardio for a second. What because I think sometimes people want to go just to the TPI and fix the injury side of things. What is the role? And it's look, it didn't make it on full swing, but we know that the PGA guys are doing at least some steady state, right? Beyond walking and golfing, they don't golf 18 or 27 every day. So, what is the benefit for somebody who is maybe confused of doing a lower intensity cardio day and or maybe putting a weight vest on. What is the benefit for somebody who's coming up and is like, should I do a hit class? Should I go for sprints? Should I like what? Talk me through what you're seeing and or what you've seen because I know it didn't make it on full swing.
Yeah. So I have my guys and girls who are chasing club head speed. They absolutely sprint.
Mhm.
Absolutely. especially if you have a club head speed need and you're not addressing like just my ability to be a powerful person. There's nothing more
Mhm.
explosive than sprinting. Sprinting and jumping are the most explosive and violent things I can do in sport, right? Essentially, a jump is a golf swing, right? We've, you can put the meters on and split hairs with some other exercise nerds, but it's pretty damn close. But as far as like steady state cardio goes, like reducing the potential miss of having fatigue in your golf round by actually doing a activity that mimics your sport of walking 11 miles to 14 miles a day is a no-brainer. There is no reason to be like, I mean, we're not walking is part of the sport at the highest level for a reason because it's a factor. You're walking 11 miles. We would like you to be, or however long your course is. Some courses are not set up super well to walk from tee box. Some courses
Mhm.
around here in New England are hilly, and you're walking like you know pretty long ways between steps. But if your only version of cardio comes when I'm also playing a neurological fatiguing activity, then you're putting yourself in detriment.
Mhm.
So the ability to mimic that and reduce misses again is a no-brainer because if you are trying to mimic a tournament condition and you're not at least walking on a treadmill for an hour or going walk your dog, man, walk the block. I'm not asking you to go run a marathon or hike a mountain. Just go do strength and cardio because we need strength when we hit the ball and we need cardio between the shot because I'm walking 11 miles. Unfortunately, it is kind of a duh moment for some people,
Right.
but I try to present it as calmly and nicely as possibly can.
Well, and I like that because beyond the like our course is about 7 miles, 6 to 7 miles from first
Okay.
tee to 18th green, and just for 18. And I find that the benefit of cardio isn't what you think. It's that when you do get up over a putt or a drive or an important shot, you need your ability to drop that heart rate before you go and either a powerful application of force or a putt that requires like you said, you're standing over a $70 $100 putt and you need to okay, calm down, you got this, right? So but I think on the opposite of that, a lot of golfers who it's a recreation, it's an outlet from a uh, let's call it sometimes it's a drinking sport. It can be very different. Where if you look at the benefit of the cardiovascular side to being able to, I think I can't remember what was it Mickelson or Woods, but they found him just walking very slow, and you were like maybe there's something to that of not letting your heart rate get up, and you're trying to keep yourself here, right? Instead of it's easy like you said over that first tee box. If you're listening to Metallica, it's easy to get like let's go. But in the same token, um, being able to kind of quiet yourself and to have that internal uh, uh, those internal constraints where you're able to get your heart rate down. I think that's a interesting benefit that maybe some people aren't they're not looking at. But I wanted to go. We're in your facility right now. For those listening, Kev has he's got a couple of golfers behind him. He's got a putting green back there. He's got I know you have some weights back there too. Talk to me about the role of brick and mortar in your own development as a coach, but also as a human. Since your facility opened, what have you noticed in yourself? What have you noticed with the community? Talk to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I opened up a gym in 2020, so community is the only thing that kept us, bread on my table. Um, so the facility that we're inside of, I sublet space. I sublet about 1,200 square feet from training space. We work on our most dense hours are on their off hours. Luckily, people aren't usually hitting golf balls at 6 and 7 a.m.
Hmm.
But yeah, we run a semi-private studio. So we noticed that during COVID, everybody kind of wanted that 6, 7, and 8 a.m. So it was great. I obviously want people to come in, but I feel bad turning away so many people. So I started opening up to semi-private. So there's 5-to-1 coaching. We'll have some private going on while we have semi-private from time to time. My head coach is a physical therapist and strength conditioning coach, so always hire up, right, Kev? You wanna
Hmm.
hire the smarter guys and girls around you, but the ability to kind of keep the community like constantly. Like I can't tell you how many matches we already have set up for the 2024 season. Some people got season long RPS match play going on. I have a season long match with one guy who claims he's a Tim client and then one guy who claims he's a Duff client, and we play together and they play together, and you know everybody wins, but there's dinner on the
Right.
line, you know.
Yeah.
So and then there's a lot of matches where people are just playing at different clubs now that they never knew somebody else at that club. Hey, everyone always wanted to play there. Or you're a member at RPS, boom, meet this guy, set up a match. There you go. And people are just swapping rounds, so nobody's really exchanging money. It's just I'll play yours next week, you play at mine next week. So we have a lot of that community going on with I don't even know how many matches are already set up. I'm sure there's some dollars been exchanged in here regarding the matches, but I get excited to see inner competition. Like, and honestly, sometimes I don't have to text people if they missed a workout. Their partner will. Somebody's
Right.
gonna text you that you missed your 7 a.m.
That's awesome. And with the role of the semi-private training for your golfers, are most of them, I know how ours are most of them surprised at the similarities? Like, oh, he has to work on that too? Oh, cool. Okay. Oh, he's doing a version of that. Like, talk to me about, I call it the sandbox effect, like somebody will see like that toy. Oh, should I be doing that? Should I be like, they kind of notice, like when you're a kid and right. But so talk to me about the role of the small group in enhancing the community.
What I always enjoy is like when there's a new guy or girl comes in, is that somebody organically will have a conversation with them saying like one or two things like I remember when I had to do that too, right?
Hmm.
Or my favorite is if someone's like, hey, when you squat, you should feel this. And they're repeating a cue that I did and I said, oh, such a proud dad moment. You know what I mean? Like, oh,
Yeah.
you're helping them. Like, thank you.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's the best testament is that like the community will take the time to be like, hey man, I remember when I had to do the goblet squat with that weight and it sucked, and don't worry, it'll get easier. Like, okay, great. That's obviously, that's super nice for somebody to hear, like, hey, keep going. Or for somebody to be like, hey man, yeah, those don't worry, those are still gonna suck in a month or two, but it's worth it. Like that sentence is as helpful. But obviously when I see somebody stepping in to give a guy or a girl a cue that I've given them once that helped them and stuck with them, that means you're doing something right.
And when it comes to the community itself, like you said, and I've said this before, where I'm like, hey, are you certified? Are you? Because if you're not certified, you can't go giving it. Like there's a certain role of the playfulness and everything else, but at the same level, your coaches and yourself, you have to be able to execute. And I go back to the TPI and the FMS, but you have to be able to execute fixes when you're on the training floor. What are some of the things that you're like, hold on, let's fix this real quick? Like what do people mess up or get right? Talk to me about what you see when you're training 3, 4, 5 guys at a time.
Oh yeah, so when I'm seeing 3 or 4 guys or girls at a time, I always become mindful that people don't. If I see something unsafe, I go to straight football coach mode, like quick, loud. So
Mm-hmm.
I get worried. Sometimes I scare people because I'm just like, "Hey, put that down." They're like, "Whoa, whoa, what did I do?" But yeah, hinging is my big one because there's a hinge in everybody's program almost every day. Like you haven't
Right.
skipped a leg day in RPS since we opened. So when people are hinging incorrectly, I fix it. Like I could be hard, like I could be mid conversation with somebody over here, and luckily, and you can kind of see it, I got mirrors everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm mid conversation with something over here and I see a bad hinge on a corner of my eye, I will stop that conversation and fix that now. Or just like, hey, Tom, can you put that down and give me 2 seconds? I'm coming to you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I address hinging. Um, but you'll know what I'm talking about. The listeners might not, but like if you hear something wrong, it's kind of like you know what a shank sounds like. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry I said the word. You know what it sounds like. I know what a non-effort med ball throws sounds like. There's a
Mm-hmm.
thud versus if you hear
Yeah.
a thud, turn around like, what are you doing? What are we playing? Pitter patter? Throw the
Yeah.
damn thing. Yeah,
Right.
like so like this isn't called rotational power layup. It's kind of one of my like we're not trying to lay up here, dude. Throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, hinge pattern will get me to stop people dead in their tracks if they're doing things wrong. Once you get to the power exercises, I always tell them intent is more important than load. But as soon as we
Mm-hmm.
get the intent, loading it accurately, so you're not like throwing a 25-pound kettlebell when it should be like 30 to 40. Because every once in a while,
Right.
like you can underload a pattern. Sometimes people underload a plyo pattern and it gets like too snappy and away from you. Those are kind of
Mm-hmm.
my those will be some of the ways to get the old football coach's voice to rear its head. But
Oh, you
usually
just go ahead.
yeah, usually I'm pretty calm, but every once in a while, I'll like if I say something and it's for safety reason and they like power through it, hits an octave.
So you just said something I think most people might have missed. Underloading a pattern. What do you mean by that?
Too soft. No, but if you're doing like, all right, let's just say kettlebell swing, like a super common exercise. If I'm getting to where I should be parallel, right? My hips are forward, my chest is nice and tall, and I've got the bell forward, but it's like 20 pounds in my hand and you're a 180-pound like strong guy, you're probably going to lose control where it might be like snapping out of your hands or it's just underloading a pattern. I'm
Mm-hmm.
creating one, I'm under stimulus, right? I'm not creating the intent is not there if I'm flicking a 20-pound kettlebell when it should be 40 to 50 plus in order to create the demand that's going to be closer to how violent your golf swing is, right? We're not going to come into the weight room. There's no way that, well, there probably is, but like I need a tendo and like some nerdy digits and stuff to think of it. If you swing at 90 miles an hour, if I come in the weight room and just baby myself, that's not nearly as violent in the weight room, or I'm not training myself, or I'm not trying to elicit like enough response, and then I'm going to go swing at 90 miles an hour. It doesn't make any sense to me because I need to train something that's going to be difficult, but understand that in the weight room, I'm still never going to really hit that amount of intensity. So like every once in a while, we don't have it too often, but if someone says you can play golf, but you can't work out, that sentence makes no sense. Because if you're telling
Mm-hmm.
somebody they can move this club with this much aggression at that amount of speed and play a full round of golf, but can't do a movement pattern that would help them or mimic or come close to an exercise, you should seek other advice.
Right. And I like the analogy too of, you can't really throw a wiffle ball 100 miles an hour,
Yeah.
right? Like the resistance needs to be enough. And I think what what the golf community misses sometimes is that we're governed by physics, and it seems to be one of those communities that with TPI, the role of full swing, and other people making it very visible. Instagram's helpful, right? And YouTube's helpful because you can see what the pros are doing. You can see what TPI is doing. TPI, Titleist Performance Institute, is learning from the world's longest drivers. And when I started with TPI, they didn't have the power section. They didn't have the power training. Now they're training, power. So they're realizing that okay, we can help golfers not get hurt or fix, what ails you in terms of the low back, in terms of the shoulder, in terms of the elbow, in terms of the knee. But in the same token, the golf community has embraced the level of intensity with John Rahm showing his deadlift, with Rory showing that he does weighted chin ups on golf rounds. Like the role of fitness these days with the golf community. I tell people sometimes, I'm like, it's only a matter of time before you get there. Even if you're like, yeah, I don't work out and I golf 3 rounds a week. That's very common here. We can technically golf almost year round. But I guess my lead in question is what's next for the golf community, for the fitness golf community, because I think we've come so far. And you mentioned how your life has been made easier by the top 50 golf designation. So what's next? I mean, we have Top Golf everywhere. We have Full Swing. The role of fitness is in the golf community is as high as it's ever been, but we know it could still go higher. So what's next for the golf fitness community?
Yeah, I think that making it more accessible to the older golf community, as well as like the guys who just have submitted to like, this is how I'm gonna swing. I think that there's like that. I think it's more obvious to the pain golfer, the pain point. I don't want to be in pain, and
Mm-hmm.
it's more obvious to the better players that golf fitness is something that I could add to my game to take it to the next level. But I still think that that middle ground golfer can benefit way more than they think they can. The same way as like the same crew that never has been fit for irons in their life could definitely benefit from being fit for irons. Like
Yeah.
that you could. I I
Yeah.
certainly I certainly did. I never thought it was my clubs. I was like, it's not
Yeah.
my clubs. It's not my clubs. I was a 205-pound linebacker swinging regular shafted irons, and someone was like, "You're just legitimately never going to get better doing that." I was like, "Can't be the clubs." He was like, "The first time I broke 100, it was my first round with new clubs." Now, it wasn't all the club, but
All
yeah,
right.
I think that same person who may benefit from actually diving in and saying like, I'd like to prioritize my golf game instead of just being happy with like shooting 182 every 40 rounds and just being like, I can finally stop being a 9 handicap and just playing to a 9. I think that's probably where I would see the most benefit from people being like, you don't always have to swing like that. You can improve. You can take lessons. You can improve your set of irons the same way you can improve your body. It's just like it is. I think that middle ground. I think it's more obvious for the like pain profile is duh. Like let's not get hurt. I want to play the
Mm-hmm.
game. Higher level tournament players, it's more obvious that like what's the next step. Fitness helps. I think that middle ground of your everyday golfer, there's still more people that could benefit from prioritizing fitness. And oh, by the way, I became a better golfer. That is, that's where I think, well, one, most people live, right? It's just, we're playing a numbers game, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where most people play and live. And then from you know, people that I would like to help more is I'd like to see more people play a 6 instead of a 10, or physically screening in the teens instead of the 20s and the 30s, and having no pain profile. And yeah,
Sure.
and also if you improve your balance, you improve your club head speed. There's my breaking news for the day.
And so often, I've had a couple of these conversations. We have people at the club that have pain, whether it's elbow or low back or whatever, knee, and they put on their microscope and they focus on one area. Oh, my elbow hurts. Oh, my elbow hurts. My low back hurts. I have to strengthen my low back. My knee hurts. I'm like, huh? Is it your knee or is it your elbow? Talk to me about the role of TPI in and or just your experience and what you've seen in working with people who come in with pain, and when they, I don't want to say leave because they hopefully never leave, but what happens? Talk me through. Somebody comes in and says my elbow hurts or my low back hurts. What do you do?
Yeah, so I could point out like if it's the elbow, it's usually the most common reason is the technique, right? Because I need to cast or I need to flip because I'm early extending, right? So if
Mhm.
we remove the need to early extend, the technique cleans up, and this takes less work on. So did I address the elbow? No. I addressed the early extension of you almost humping the golf ball, and now
Right.
your elbow doesn't hurt because you don't need to use it as much. So oftentimes they're like, my elbow hurts. I run through a screen. I know why their elbow hurts because they're early extending and flipping, and they're hit behind the ball if they don't time up their strike well, and it takes all the boom right to the elbow. Like, duh, my elbow
Right.
would hurt. If you're early extending, I wouldn't be surprised if you have elbow pain. I'm not surprised at all. What I can explain is like, hey, your elbow is doing that because of that. That sometimes is like, oh, it's not my elbow's fault, it's my hip's fault. Okay.
Right.
If I can miss the green because the wind was blowing, I'd like to blame the wind as well. You know what I mean? So if I give you the out, take it, man. If I give you the life jacket, take it. But
Right.
a lot of times, what's made it easier is like the TPI screen will give you the homework. So it'll give you the mobility routine. So oftentimes I tell people like homework and exams. You can get by just acing all your exams, which I consider your workouts. You can get by.
Mhm.
It's just certainly a whole lot easier if you also do your homework, right? So I don't know about other students, but I was a grinder, so I needed to get my homework done
Right.
because I was probably getting a good day, getting a B plus on my exam. So I was a grinder. All my projects, my verbal projects, my homework were done because
Right.
we were not acing that exam. So yeah, oftentimes if like it kind of comes down, if I give you an out and it's a physical out and it's real, take it. Okay, now let's improve it. Or if we can do the homework to improve upon you know what your end goal is, then do that. But uh, the apps have also removed some excuses like, oh, I can't do the mobility homework. Like, we have no, there's not a lot of people with no smartphone and no Wi-Fi access in their home. So
Right.
there's your excuse. If they keep going with the, I can't, and like might not, you don't work with everybody.
Right.
I work with
That's fair.
many people. Let me help you. Help me
Yeah.
help you.
I love it. So before we sign off, I usually have one question, and I know you are. That's why you're here. But I usually have one softball type question, and it's about you personally and your development, and it's why would you say and or how you are coachable?
Yeah, so I've been coachable because I learn by doing. So I'm a tactile learner as well. So like when I first started golf fitness, I was like, yeah, I work with a few golfers and I'm going to learn how this will help them, but I learned by doing. So like I can only, and I have two clients that were with me right when I first started, and they laugh all the time about the journey we've made because they were like legitimately guinea pigs. I was like, I think this will help your golf game, and I'm over here like looking at, I'm like, yeah, that looks like a golf swing. Okay, that's where I started in fitness, but like I learned by doing. So like those first clients that luckily I have two clients that were with me when I first started the um, golf fitness, let's just call it pursuit, which I'm currently still on, always learning.
Mhm.
But I also, through the connections through the TPI or the PGA or some of the teaching professionals that are behind me, I get to sit in some of the best rooms and get to learn from some of the best teaching pros. And if I can add 10% of value to their client or that session, I do so. So one of the things I've been doing more is I travel to clubs, I give presentations on how golf fitness can be helpful for, either you or your club. And maybe I'm propping up that next young coach who's learning golf fitness and they spend 3 hours watching me live fire through clients.
Mhm.
I hope to be, olive branch to help them out. So, but I am still learning by doing. It's not necessarily fake it till you make it, but in the beginning it might have been. So
Right.
I was some people say they hate this saying. I was like, well, you're learning. You're constantly learning. And it's lame to say I'm constantly learning. I'm definitely a tactile learner, so I'm not out here reading the most up-to-date studies, but I am sitting in the most up-to-date rooms, listening to the most, you know, if Mark Blackburn and Jason Vale let me sit in a room and watch them coach, I'm sure as hell going to listen. You know, Lance Gill's running through a session in Florida. I take the time out to go pursue those lesson days, and I sit in the back and I listen.
I love
Sometimes
it.
it screws
I
up
love
my own golf game, but everybody else usually improves. I've
That's
screwed up
right.
my golf so many times trying to learn so much stuff, but like my clients benefit. But I've messed my golf game up a time or two by going to take too many lessons or listening to too many pieces of advice at once.
No, it's perfect, and that's why you're on here, and you're just such an asset to the golf fitness community, and the New England's lucky to have you, and certainly the World Wide Web. Speaking of the World Wide Web, where can people find you?
So the website is trainrps.com.
Okay.
That's where you find most of our like our online programming and stuff like that. The apps are making things a little easier, Kev, as you know. It's easier to coach people across the country now. But yeah, all my social media is Coach Kevin Duffy. I try to
Love it.
KISS, keep it simple, stupid.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you, my man. And I hear you have childcare duty the rest of the day, so go have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, I'm gonna go teach the little man wrestling, I think.
Love it. Thanks, Scott.